started practicing in my nights from up in the Fresno area. And so a lot of the stuff that I've done has a lot of crazy Mr. Miyagi type principles. Like it's like a Karate Kid. What does he have him do the whole time he's like learning karate? Sand the floor, paint the fence, wax on, wax off, that kind of thing. But a lot of that type of muscle work and that type of drill work can apply, it applies to fighting. So, for example, I do a lot of pell work with a yardstick because the problem that people have if they're not super regimented about it, for example, learning the things that Helgi was going over, 90% of the average fighter in the SCA, if they do pell work, they go out to just hit it and see how hard they can hit it, and then they say, yeah, I can hit hard, and they walk away. Pell work is like 5 minutes. They go out, they throw a few shots, yeah, I'm good, and they move on. And I don't like that. It's counterproductive, so that's why I make people use a yardstick, because you can't swing it fast, because you break it. And also, edge orientation is everything. If you hit people with flat blows, they don't know they've been hit with a flat blow. It's on you to let them know that you've landed something flat. So you need to tell them. So I do pell work with this, because if you're not edge on, much like using one of the plastic, these nylon weapons, it hurts. Well, I don't like breaking yardsticks. And so I was given a yardstick over 20 years ago from my night for pell work, and I've never broken it. But so problem is, what happens when you don't have this? Like if you live in an apartment and you don't have one. I mean, I made mine, a lot of times now when people make pells, we have them so they can break down and you can set them up easily on the porch. But what if you don't have the ability to make one? And you don't have, what other things can you do that would apply to fighting? So using something like a yardstick you can do visualization. You can pretend there's a pell in front of you, and you can practice throwing your shots, edge on. You can practice your transitions, and sure, you don't have a thing, and you can start using a lot of real sword flourish type drills where you're doing these rotations, and you can just nice and slow and easy. Well, I would practice things like this. It's a drill. I play video games a lot. I stay up late, watch a lot of TV, or I don't watch a lot of TV now. But when my night lives, like I said, he lives up near Fresno, so we would get on Skype and we'd be chit-chatting. He'd be playing some game and I'd be doing something else, but we'd be on the horn, open communication. And he was wanting me to work on my rap. So, like Helgi was showing the techniques earlier on how to throw a rap and using the different muscle groups. Well, sometimes it's just you want to practice the smooth, how to make that muscle memory smooth, and how to make everything. So I take my hand, you hold it next to your chest. If you guys want to grab, you can use a nylon sword, or you can grab one of the yardsticks if you want. You go from your guard, nice and slowly, you do a rap, and it ends in the palm of your hand. You just hit, pull it through, over the head, and you reset. Because this will let you make sure it's edge on. It lets you work your hand, but since it's a lightweight, it's low. I mean, especially what you're doing in the last class with sword. He's having you learn the muscle memory, and you're going, and you all have muscle groups you've never worked before, and it's probably sore, or it's forward for those who've been fighting for a while. It's a different technique than they've been using. It's all about the low impact, and it's also good for if you have a sore shoulder or a sore elbow. Maybe you get tennis elbow issues, because that's one of the things that can develop if you're not using your technique correctly on throwing a rap. You can develop tennis elbow very quickly because you're turning your hand and you're forcing the blade to do things it's not supposed to do. Well, when you come back during a physical therapy session, they'll have you do low impact workouts to work the muscles to re-strengthen them, and this is something that you can do. And this is almost like a nervous twitch for me. If I have a sword in my hand, I'll just sit here and do this, and I'll let my hand go low. But now that the shot's coming down, you have to watch out, because I'm not gonna lie, I've hit myself. I've not been paying, got too zoned out and missed and hit myself in the face. and I would watch TV. I'd like stand up and watch TV for like 15 minutes. All right, I'm bored. Now what do I want to do? Well, one of the things that a lot of people don't practice are defensive drills. I have enough defense to stay alive long enough to kill somebody. I'm not a defensive fighter. You know, Helgi's really put a lot of effort in his blocking and his shield technique to get a very strong defense, so he can walk up to somebody with a buckler and stand at super close range and be like, block, 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 and he has all that worked out. Well, I'm not that dedicated to that. So one of the things that happens with shield work is people get tired because they can't hold their shield up anymore. Now, yeah, I have a 3-pound weight, but you can get canned soup, you can get anything that's kind of a little heavier, or you can use your actual shield. And I would watch TV, and I would do like 25 reps, and then I'd set down the yardstick, and then I'd pick up this, and I'd hold my arm at an extension, and I'd do 20 circles counterclockwise. You slow it down. Don't just go out there and do this, but nice and slow. Just do like 20 counterclockwise circles. Pick up the pell. Pick up the yardstick. 20 reps. And then now do 20 clockwise. 20 reps. Now do rectangles. You can go clockwise, counterclockwise, but basically the intent is you're doing these geometric patterns, because when you're in a fight, now your blocking becomes one of those patterns, similar to the wax on, wax off from the Karate Kid. It's the same thing. Okay, well, this particular shot's coming in. Well, now your muscles are used to moving in that direction, whether it's a straight across and up, or if it's a rotation, because certain shield styles, moving your shield a certain way, you have to move your hand a certain way, otherwise the angles change on your blocking surface, and so you may want to actually have your hand kick out and drop because of whatever reason. So it'll help you work your shoulder, and the trick is, instead of just standing there and going until you're completely spent, you go until you start to get a little spent, then you do something else, and then you pick that up and you do that until you start getting a little tired. And the thing is finding these little things like that to just trade off on. Without a doubt, this is like one of the best tools we have, short of putting on armor and going. This is what helps you really hone it down. These are the little supplemental things you can do in between when you don't have time to do that. Workout methods like P90X and everybody doing like self-resistance and doing squats and burpees and that kind of calisthenic. Well, these little, I call them dumb because they kind of are. It seems like it's kind of a dumb thing to do, but at the same time, as an example, you guys were learning how to do the triggering technique. Well, if you get a water bottle or a weight or whatever, you can practice, open your hand, hold it, and then roll it up. Do it nice and slow. It's not very much weight, but it rolls in your hand, and the trick is you don't want it to roll out of the palm of your hand. And what you're doing is you're working all the muscles in your hand and your fingers and up in your forearm, because now when you go to fight, you can make that fist, and you've worked those on a really low level, but it also will help you get flexibility in the muscles, because far too often, especially when you're young, guys will strap on their armor and they'll just run out there and go. And then there's guys like me where I have to warm my arm up, I have to warm my back up, I have to warm my warm my body up, and some people will warm up more than others. But without doing this kind of thing in between, that helps me keep the flexibility in my hands. They make you can make the hand stretchers, or they make exercise devices that you can use to work on your grip. They make them for musicians. You can buy them at workout stores, but these are a lot cheaper. So you can just do that type of work, and then you can work on the wrist again with the water bottle. Take about, the top out of it, not even quite a quarter, Remember the stirring the pot thing you guys were learning earlier? You can do the same thing with this, and the trick is you want the inertia to pull the water up into the top of it. And it gives you counterbalance, but it shifts. You can feel the water. So if you guys want, grab a bottle of water and drain some out, and you can feel how the weight gets herky and jerky, and what you want it to be is you want to get to where it's a nice and smooth, where when it spins around, you can feel it. And it becomes a little more challenging the more water you take out of it. But yeah, put it, like I tend to use, these are the 3 fingers I fight with. These 2 are just kind of there to help, but this is what does most of my work. And so with holding the bottle, you can let it roll around, and you can even do slow work with this, because what ends up happening is shifting the weight in the water bottle simulates having a much longer sword. So you can simulate doing pell work and transitioning the tip and your balance point by using a bottle of water. You know, you could do you could use your a rattan sword or a yardstick as well and get a similar effect. But then now you have this thing that you're swinging over your head, and maybe you'll hit your mom's lamp, you know, or whatever. Like at my last house, I hit the ceiling probably 20 times with red tape. So there are all these red racing stripes in the ceiling, and then my wife gets up the next day and then yells at me. Nobody needs that kind of drama in their life. So you can practice, just visualize a pell, and you can just work on that rotation. You can work on the redirection, because especially on the redirection, if you are forcing the water bottle over, you'll feel the water shift quickly. And you want it to be a nice transition. Another similar, I don't remember the class, but in like a lot of physics classes, we'll have you do something with a bucket of water, where it involves spinning the bucket of water around and no water comes out. It's a similar thing. You're doing this because you want the water to transition smoothly, and that will help you know, oh, I'm turning my hand over too fast, or I'm turning my elbow over too fast. And again, because it's low impact, you can do that to warm your wrist up, or if you tweak your wrist in a fight. Throughout the week, ice it with ibuprofen, and you can do this to start stretching everything back out. And, you know, all that out of a bottle of water. I didn't get a chance to make one of the other things, and I wish I should have thought to ask to have you read the rope. You can take a length of rope, put tape on one end, and practice throwing shots with a rope. And the object is, if you throw it with proper technique, the rope will be at full extension and will whip around, and not this kind of thing. You can work on your transitions and your reset, your hip, and that, and you can just feel the inertia pulling pulling it straight. You can do, you can do that like with the bottle of water, but obviously having something, a rope or a sword, to practice those transitions are good. Let's see, what other things that I'm trying to remember, the other things I had. A lot of people have footwork drills that they've done, like they'll have like fencing manuals or whatever, and they'll have like the triangle, and you can work on your footing that way. I was dumb and the internet wasn't around back when I started learning how to do this, so a very simple thing that you can do in between, like if you're doing stuff in your back area, if you've got space. I'll be removing that in a little bit. Yeah. Tina used to make me do a ton of these. It's an old basketball drill. So you got like these sections of concrete with the lines. You start straddling one. Now, obviously these are pretty far apart, but basically it's a line drill, and what you're doing is you're just shifting your hips, and you just, because back then I was very heavy on my feet, and I would just do this kind of thing, and by practicing this kind of movement, lighten me up on my feet. So now I can, on the balls on my feet. Don't be on the heels of be on your heels, because then your weight distribution's all screwed up. Unfortunately, the last little like tiny thing I got involves going over here, and then we can open it up to if you guys want to talk about anything in particular, or but is the string drill. So if you guys want to step over here and see this crazy thing I got going on over here, actually, go ahead and grab. So if you can find a spot, like some people have a carport, or you can go to a park, find some place to put up a cord and put a little bell on it. You can use this for both offensive and defensive drills. On the like a defensive side, what boxers will use this for is for their line, for when they approach a target, and they'll do a lot of shifting. Well, they'll step underneath it. And so you can practice your advance and keeping your guard up and working down that line. Well, we can do a similar thing. And since I have a habit of standing up really tall to force myself to get into a lower center of gravity, this is set lower than my shoulder. And so now I take my sword or a yardstick, and you practice moving around it without hitting it. Now, unfortunately, it's not as sensitive because of how long this is and where the bell's at, but the object is to move up and down the line without triggering the bell ringing from hitting it. And once you get used to doing this kind of thing, then you do it with your armor on, because now your helmet's bigger, you've got the extra weight. And what this was to help me with was, instead of walking at my opponents like this, I'd have a lower center of gravity, because the lower you are, smaller target. You can step, throw a shot under, throw a wrap over, shot under, step. You can do some kind of a blow drill up and above and under it. Don't hit it. You don't want to hit it and have the bell ring. That can help you with your with stepping, to keep your feet on the opposite side of the line. But that way, if you want to step, you can also work on, you know, if you want to use your back foot to step forward for whatever reason, because maybe sometimes you need to do that. I've had that happen where someone rushes this side, and instead of turning this way to face, it actually was nice to void that foot back, give them space to come in, because now I'm set and I'm actually wound up to hit them in the back as they run past me. The offensive drills you can do with this, and this is where the mind bend, and last Collegium I did a class on angles and how to tweak your angles, and this has something to do with when Helgi was teaching the wrap techniques earlier. I will use this, it's a lot of visualization. This is the top of a shield. And so it doesn't matter, it could be out here in the center, but if my target was right here, how can I throw a shot and not hit the string to ring the bell? Matter of fact, I'll put that right in the center. So sure, anyone can just do this and you're cool. Well, what about if I want to learn how to practice a wrap that comes up and over? How close can I get my hand to this line without hitting it and still effectively strike a target? You can use this to try to figure out, okay, I need this much clearance to hit a target behind it. Okay, so obviously that's not going to work, and you just kind of play around with it and pretend there's something behind it, and this is an obstacle in the way. If you slide this kind of up nearby this tree, for example, if I'm trying to hit the tree and this is an obstacle in the way, you can adjust the height to however you want. Say I want to try throwing an offside body shot, so this is my target I wanted to hit over here. Well, obviously if I throw it wrong, I'm going to hit the string. So you can practice changing your angle in your hand to throw around it and not hit it. But in a real fight, no one's gonna let you lean way over and do this unless you really, really caught them with their pants down. So it becomes more of a game of how close can I get to the string without actually hitting it to trigger the bell. Because then that gives you the ability to just defeat their block. Because if someone feels comfortable in their defense and that blow looks like it's going to hit their shield, a high percentage of the time, they're not even going to move it. Because they're like, well, I've already got that block. And so by learning how to just barely clear the shot, and you know, there are a lot of times where you're not going to, you're still going to end up hitting it and not necessarily land the shot, but then, okay, now you just tweak it a little more. Maybe you have to lean a little more. Maybe you have to shift your hand over a little more. This was really, I would do the string drill pretty much just in my backyard. I'd turn on some music and I'd practice going under and then walking like this, trying to maneuver my sword and shield around it without triggering it because I want to keep that low center of gravity, and would just work my way up it. Unfortunately, that bell's not really sensitive. Some of them, the one I used to use was really like you barely touch it, it would ring a whole bunch, and then the penalty is you start over. So, more visualization, like using your environment for practice when you don't have a pell. For example, this chain link fence. If you could use this as a training tool, you could practice a thrust. Don't hit the wire. You want to hit right in the center. So maybe you take some duct tape and mark out a spot. Get in your guard. No. Okay. No. And you can use that as a game to try to practice getting the shot and not hitting anything around it. You can do the same thing on the gaps in the doorway. You could use these. That's a slot shot. If you think about it, that's like the edge of a shield. And maybe that's their sword, or like this. So you can practice trying to drop the shot in there without hitting anything. And a lot of this becomes just repetition. To hit those gaps, you need to throw that a lot. And practicing on a pell is good because it lets you learn the shoulder and the hip and the foot mechanic and everything to throw the shot. But when it comes to the targeting, if you don't challenge yourself to have something to not hit, instead of not just actually striking, if you don't have something to avoid hitting, i.e. a shield or their sword, if you don't have something to hit around, it is good. It's still good training, but this gives it a little extra to it, because far too often when we're fighting full speed, you get up in the scrum and they're not just going to stand there, or they're going to crowd you, and that's something a lot of fighters get flustered in when they're crowding. Some areas, fighting up close is very, very, that's the norm. So, you know, most areas people like a nice B range right in the middle. If you can't throw a shot into traffic and hit what you're aiming at, this is a good way to practice that. So making these little games of like trying to find, okay, I want to try to practice this mechanic of dropping the tip in there, or throwing that thrust, and then you can get to pick up target. And so once you get good, say this was my spot here, and you practice this thrust, like to the point where it's like easy mode. You throw it and you put it there, you don't hit anything. Well, now, can you throw it from here? Can you step and throw it? Can you duck, stand, and throw it? And that's where you start. It becomes a game of just try to hit that spot and don't hit anything else around it. And it just gives you something other than hit the pell, or it gives you something to do if you don't have a pell in between practices, because it still lets you work your hand-eye, your shoulder mechanic for unwinding that shot, unwinding that thrust. Again, that's about, unfortunately, that's like all the mojo I've brought. I have more things I'm more willing to talk about. Those are the only things from my list of stuff that I had typed up. Wonderful thing, and it kills the IT guy to have a Word document die. And the previous saved copy was like the first 5 items I wrote down with no descriptions. So that's kind of the end of the day, and people kind of getting tired anyway. So anyway, if any of you guys have questions about any of this stuff or whatever, fire away. Or if you guys want to, if there's anything you want to work on, like something that you practiced today that you want to do some more of, or if anybody has questions about something that they've been working on or want to work on, I mean, at this point, I'll throw Patrick on the bus and he can answer questions too. If you guys have anything for him, Your Grace, and I'm sure Helgi will be back in a little bit. But if you guys have anything else you want to mess around with, I thank you guys for humoring me for the few minutes in which I had material.
I got a pell drill that I do a lot. This is actually not a pell. That's a good two-person combination of sort of drill. Yeah. Basically what we do is get 2 people, get down beside the pell from you.
Attacking my camera.
This isn't a race, you're not trying to catch the person. But you're going to pick one person to lead and one person to follow. So if I'm going to lead, your objective is to stay opposite the pell. And we're going to throw, and this doesn't have to be a full speed kind of thing, but throw reasonable, coordinated shots, and we're going to move around the pell to practice your footwork and be able to move laterally. So as we go, just keep throwing good shots. The other thing this does is it makes you pay attention to your opponent, even though you're doing pell work. And I'm not trying to catch him, but he's got to pay attention to me so he can stay out on the pell. One of the other things that I do while I'm doing this, if you watch my footwork, I'll do this just myself around the pell. I'll work around the pell. See how I'm moving forward around the pell? We're moving backwards around the pell. And then transition to sword leg forward around the pell, or backwards around the pell. Transition back. Shield leg forward, and making that take place smoothly as I'm walking around the pell. So that my footwork is coordinated with my sword work. Just getting to a point where you can smoothly make those transitions around the pell, so you're not tripping over yourself and you suddenly have to change directions in the middle of a fight. It makes you pay attention to a lot more things at once doing pell work than just standing there. Makes sense.